Cal State University at Long Beach in California. At Oswego, Professor Kumar received the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching and the President's Award for Creative and Scholarly Activity and Research. He has more than 75 refereed publications, and he has published 2 books co-authored with others, Science in the Medieval World and A History of Science in World Cultures, Voices of Knowledge. He's also authored a book titled Sciences of the Ancient Hindus. I just took a look at the book. It's outside if you'd like to purchase a copy afterwards. It's an amazing compilation of contributions of Hindus in different fields of science. Professor Kumar is a recipient of various fellowships, one from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation in Germany and NOVA NASA. His work has also been covered by the popular media, including the Washington Post, Family Life, The Scientist, and India Abroad. He is active in the fields of atomic physics, history of science, and science education. You can find more information at his website. So without further ado, I will invite Professor Alok Kumar to the stage to take over from here. Please give him a big hand.
Thank you, Dr. Ganeshan, for the introduction. And at the outset, I would like to thank the Vidya Temple Society and ICC for inviting me. It's truly an honor that I'm here meeting people, exchanging ideas, and learning from them. I hope all of you can hear my voice. If you cannot, you have to tell me I can be louder. Now, the first person, before I even talk about my lecture, I would like to acknowledge one person. He's the reason why I'm here, and that's Professor Ambalavinar Somaskanda. One day I was sitting in Seattle, and as an author, it's a very lonely world. You and your computer, and then when you publish something, you wonder about it, if somebody is reading it or not. So it was a ritual for me to check Amazon.com if somebody has written bad things or good things about me. So one day, early in the morning, I saw a comment, and let me read that comment for you. Excellent book. And see, aging, I can't read very well. Excellent book, one of the thoroughly researched books I have read. India's glorious past in all fields of knowledge. Many of them plagiarized and stolen by the West. Without attribution is coming to light slowly but surely. So, and under that was Dr. Ambalavinar Somaskanda. So I immediately knew how many Somaskandas will be there in America. Those who have the first name Ambalavinar. So I immediately decided to Google his name, and to my complete surprise, I found out that he lives in Rochester. And so about 1 year ago, I somehow got his phone number and I made a phone call. And I must say that he's truly a friend. Because for a variety of reasons, any person who likes to write good things about my book, I consider them as good friends, Let me also talk about 2 more persons who are here. One person say, I have known him for about 45 years. It's a coincidence that we studied together and our rooms in a dorm were very close to each other. He was doing his PhD in chemistry and I was doing my PhD in physics. After our PhD, complete coincidence, this was in India by the way, complete coincidence that both of us were in Germany. And again, neighbors. After Germany, again, both of us came to America and again, neighbors. Completes that coincidence, we both have the same name. His name is also Alok Kumar and he's sitting, so stand up Alok. He is a scientist in Bosch and Lam, and if you ever hear bad things about Alok Kumar, it's about him, not about me. He is the troublemaker, not me. And Professor Nand Kumar, who is sitting somewhere I cannot see, and Nand Kumar, can you stand up? Where is he? He is the person who drove me here, and the reason I'm with you is he's the cause. So thank you, Nand Kumar, I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate, as I mentioned, Vidya Temple Society and ICC for inviting me. And I have been lecturing for about 4 decades. So I've been lecturing on these topics for so long. And I have to tell you something. This is the very first invitation. This is the very first invitation from a temple. So I really appreciate Vidya Temple Society for taking this initiative, because temples are not only the spiritual centers telling us how to go to heaven, they should be social and intellectual centers also. So I'm so happy to see that Vidya Temple Society is doing that. I wish more temples get involved in these kind of intellectual lectures. By the way, 4 decades ago, I came to America. One more thing, I forgot to tell you that my lecture will be for 40 minutes. I love to talk and I can go forever, but I know, I must stop in 40 minutes and I will be the last person to leave this place. So in case you want to talk with me, if you discuss something, advise me, criticize me, feel free. I'm going to be here. 4 decades ago, I came to Los Angeles and I started teaching in California State University and made lots of friends who wanted to learn about India. And so they used to come to me and ask questions, and a large number of times I could not reply to their questions. Something very basic. And then I realized that, my God, I studied in India, I did my PhD in India, and yet I knew so little about the Indian culture, about the Indian traditions, about the intellectual contribution of India. And I got angry. And I thought, if I do not know somebody, by the way, who grew up in Haridwar, that's where I grew up, so it was common for me to go and talk with monks and sadhus and who used to visit us, in our household. And yet I knew so little about the Indian culture. And so the issue to me was, how do we define our culture, our country, to the young generation? And that was the issue that I thought about. And just think about when a child is born in our family, just to train that child for potty training, we put so much effort. But we hardly put any effort to define the culture, the religion. We just assume that the person will know. And person don't. And particularly the second generation in America. So we have to do something about it, and I decided to do something about it. And very soon I learned that if an account is written by an Indian that is labeled by, most Western critics as a biased view, and I realized there has to be a way out. And so I came up with this idea that if India was a great civilization, other cultures must have written something about India. And I decided to study that, and that was a very good decision on my part, because I found out that the Egyptian literature, Middle Eastern literature, European literature, Greek literature, it is full of accounts where they describe what a great culture it was. And I immediately realized that's the way to write a book. Because if somebody is biased, it is the original manuscript that was written either in Greece or in Egypt or in Iraq or in Europe. And if that account is biased, let's dump the whole Western literature. End result, I have never received that criticism that I am biased in favor of India. So I ended up writing 3 books. The first book was Science in the Medieval World, which is right here. I published it in 1992. It is based on an 11th century document from Muslim Spain. A person who was a Muslim, his whole purpose was, and he was a judge also, a religious judge, whose job was to implement Sharia's laws. I want you to understand that because it will tell us something more later on. So this book was written in the 11th century in Spain, and it was not known to the English-speaking world, and so I immediately decided to get it translated, collaborated with some people, and published that book. After that, I published this Sciences of the Ancient Hindus, and then later on, a history of science in world cultures. So let me first focus on this book, Science in the Medieval World. I want to share 2 reviews. One is by E.S. Kennedy, who is he's a legend in mathematics, history of mathematics. And he said this first English version of an important work should prove to be very useful. And then Donald Hill, who was a historian in the British, in England, I think in Cambridge University, he published it in the British Journal for the History of Science, that this book is an invaluable reference work. For historians of Islamic science in particular, but also for historians of science in other cultural areas. Now, by the way, academics, they don't use the word invaluable, and that too in a journal like that. And let me share now something that is written in that book. According to that book, the first nation to have cultivated science is India. Remember, the person has very little connection to India. This is a powerful nation having a large population and a rich kingdom. India is known for the wisdom of its people over many centuries. All the kings of the past have recognized the ability of the Indians in all branches of knowledge. So this was European knowledge about India in 11th century. Europe was saying that India is number one. Of course, things have changed today because they realized they decided to colonize, and to colonize, first thing you have to do is convince those people that they need you. They don't have a heritage, they are weak. So massive literature was produced. Another quote from that book. The Indians, as known to all nations for many centuries, are the essence of wisdom, the source of fairness and objectivity. These are people of sublime pensiveness, universal epilogues, and useful and rare invention. Again, it's Europe that is saying that in India we are producing useful and rare inventions. What are those inventions? Even those who have educated in India, we hardly know. It is never taught to us. So the issue is, what should we do about it? What are those inventions? Who did it? By the way, this book has done extremely well. It is sold all over the world. It was published in 1992, long ago, and it's pretty boring, by the way. If you have a sleeping disorder, read that book, it will put you to sleep. That's how it is. It is, and you don't have to buy it. It's available in University of Rochester, and it is also available. There is a public library in Rochester, and they have that book. Now, how many copies in India of this book? 0. So I decided this is the book that tells that India was a great civilization, and it was a very popular book in medieval Europe. And suddenly it disappeared because the version of history that it was providing did not fit with the colonial agenda. So if people in India will know, they would love to pick it up. So I started going and buying lots of copies and giving it to people that put it in your library. These are the professors, and I was completely surprised that they were telling me this book is too toxic. So 1992, 2016, there is 0 copy of this book in India, and it is available all over the world. So that's how the situation is, and that tells you why we are so poorly informed about India. Let me talk about the current status. Most countries, we celebrate our heroes, including, the great scientific and mathematical minds. For example, Greece had Aristotle and Socrates, and Italy had Galileo and Fibonacci. England had Maxwell and Newton. France had Laplace and Fourier. And India had Kannada and Aryabhatta. All the other names, I'm sure you have heard about them if you have taken science courses, but you never hear anything about Aryabhatta or Kannada. That's the current status. That's the way it is in America. That's the way it is in India and the rest of the world. However, if you study Aryabhatta and Kannada, then you know that these people can match any intellectual in the world. Now, the issue is, if that is the case, just imagine erasing the name of Pythagoras, Aristotle, Plato from our philosophy book because they are old. It's an old news. We did it long ago, therefore perhaps irrelevant. I don't think that's a fair thing to do, and that is not done anywhere in the Western world, and for that matter, even in the Eastern world. Even in India, you can study about Plato, Pythagoras, Aristotle, Socrates, but you cannot study about Aryabhatta and Kannada. That's the way our educational system is. It's unfortunate, and I decided that it will be my one-man crusade to change it. And I've been lecturing wherever I can, and write articles and books, and by the way, talking about that, I completely forgot to mention one thing, that the title of the talk, it was chosen by Dr. Somaskanda. So if you like the talk title, give him the credit. If you don't like it, you can blame me. And I have given a similar talk in 1994, right here in ICC. And again, it was somebody else who chose the title of the talk, and that person chose the same title. And let me also tell you why I came here. What happened was, I was sitting in my apartment, and I received a phone call from somebody in Rochester, and said that, listen, we have a former Shankaracharya, person who worked as Shankaracharya at one time, and he's so old, so he renounced that, and he is right now in Rochester, and he wants to meet with you, and he has an article written by you in a physics magazine in India, and therefore he wants to see you. Can he come and stay with you for 3 days? My immediate reaction was, here is a stranger calling me. So I looked at my apartment and I thought, if they steal everything, how much money will I lose? And I realized it will be less than $500. So I said, okay, come on in. And he came and he stayed with me for 3 nights. And he had serious dietary restriction. It has to be vegetarian, it has to, and so many other things. So the poor Shankaracharya, he stayed with me for 3 nights. All he ate was fruits, and even in fruits, he mostly liked banana, and little bit of yogurt and peanuts. That's it, for 3 days. It was embarrassing, but that's the life of a single man. I didn't know how to cook, so I knew immediately that I have to get married. He wanted me to do some things, that was the purpose why he came, and he wanted to discuss quite a few things with me. But he did not realize that professors can be broke also. The plan needed a substantial amount of money, and as a young man, I could not raise that money, so I could never do that. He told somebody in Rochester that invite this person, and that's how I came here in 1994. Now, talking about the current status, if we do not know history, if you do not know your own culture, then you are like a limb who doesn't know that you are a part of a tree. And that's the situation right now in India. We all know how to say, oh, India had a great past, but we cannot say the next sentence. Why? And that's the situation. So let me talk about a few things about the ancient traditions. First, debate. That was ingrained in Indian society, where for marriage, the grooms were selected based on their intellectual power. Debate was very common. That's how Gautam Buddha got married. And sometimes you had to show your power. That's how Lord Rama got married to Sita. So that's part of our Indian tradition, that we debate and we avoid celebration for the victor or insult to the loser. Those are the norms. Norms that are very well defined in Charaka Samhita, which is an ancient book on medicine, and the rules are so detailed and so nicely written. I wish if more people can learn that, because I have seen people, little difference, they'll lose their temper and walk away. That's not how our traditions are. Second tradition, truthfulness. Manduka Upanishad, it tells us, truth alone conquers, not falsehood. And by truth is laid out the path leading to gods. So that's the pathway for moksha, the ultimate goal for all Hindus. So Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, these are the guiding principles. They have been throughout in our culture. Role of a guru. God knows how many people have told me the main priest here right now, the priest of Vidya Temple Society, he is right now in Australia. And the respect they have for that person is truly amazing. That's cultural. We have always respected our teachers. That's a sign of an intellectual society. We are not judging you based on what car you are driving or what house you have, but how much you know. So that's the tradition of Indian society. And the last thing is science and religion. And I just want to, by the way, if I come here, can you hear me? Can you?
You have to hold the mic.
No. See, I can see your face, how many of you are sleeping if I stand here. Here, it's all dark for me, you know. Okay, so how do you know that there is God? There are only two ways, or maybe three ways. One, through revelation. You are praying, and some days suddenly you get that insight. That's one way. Like Lord Buddha meditating under a tree, got that insight. The second thing is somebody else is telling you. So your mom and dad, they are telling you that there is a God, pray. That's a very weak way to learn about God. And if your mom and dad are telling you, how did they learn? Grandfather, great-grandfather, and so on. But what about the first person, Manu? How did he think about that there is a God? The only way is you can learn about Creator, means God, is to learn about creation. So you see the beauty of creation and then you wonder why. And from there you get that insight. Throughout in our history, it is the science that is allowing us to learn about Creator. And so science and religion, they have always been in tune with each other. There was never, ever in the history of India a confrontation between science and religion. So, astronomy, mathematics, chemistry, physics, yoga, medicine, these were all practiced to meet the need of religion. And of course, to fulfill natural curiosity because you want to learn about creation. Let me show you a statement that is coming from Aryabhatta. This book was written in 5th century in India, and it says, whoever knows Das Gitika Sutra. Das Gitika Sutra means those 10 verses, which describes the movements of the earth and the planets in the sphere of the asterisms, passes through the path of the planets and goes to the higher Brahman. Means astronomy is a tool to achieve salvation or moksha. And I also want you to think about this statement. Movements of the earth. It's not saying we are living in a geocentric universe. We are talking about 5th century. So in 5th century, motion to the earth was assigned by in the Western world. It will be 16th century, and I will come back to this point one more time so that you know I'm not playing with the words here. I'm not, just translating it to make it more meaningful. You will see a lot more about it. Same thing when Vaisheshika Sutra was written by Kannada, he was saying that you learn physics, you will achieve moksha. That was the mindset of our ancient people, science was bound to prosper in India because science was always in tune with religion. So if tomorrow you come up with a new discovery and you come up with new ideas, a new rule, it was easily accepted. These are some of the contributions, and I'm pretty sure you know some of these. And zero place value notation. When I'm talking about place value notation, that means when we write 11, we write as 1 and 1. So the first one is 10. Somebody must have invented that. An invention that is so simple that we teach numbers first to our children before we teach alphabet. Because it is so innovative and yet so simple. Trigonometric function sign, heliocentric solar system, the concept of atom, iron pillar that will not catch rust, it will not rust. Steel, even today, Indians basically own steel industries all over the world, including America. Plastic surgery, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Pythagoras in the end. That's my plan. And by the way, there is no way I can talk about everything. So whenever I feel that you are getting bored, I'll just stop. That's how it's going to be, because the amount of information, I cannot complete it even in 10 lectures. We are so fortunate that the tradition that we have, the culture we belong to, has made so many contributions to science. So let me first go to the zero. Zero, it's a placeholder, and that means it tells us in a place value notation that there is nothing there. Nothingness is a very powerful concept that evolved in Indian philosophy, Hindu philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, where even the universe was created out of nothing. So nothing is not vacuum in Indian philosophical tradition. In fact, it is everything. And I cannot go into it, but because it will take a lot of time, and how this philosophy evolved, but I would be happy to talk about it after the lecture. But today I want to tell you, when Indians invented it, they called it Shunya. Shunya means nothing. They were the teachers of the Arabs. So when Arabs learned it, they looked for a word for nothing. And the word in Arabic for nothing is sifar. So sifar became Shunya. When Europeans learned it from Arabs, by the way, Arabs were the teacher of Europeans, something we do not know, we do not talk about it. Every time we think of Iraq, all we think about is some stupid people live there and maybe we should do carpet bombing of that place. Because we do not know about them. So we have no empathy, we are not sensitive. So if they are suffering, our education is dividing us rather than uniting us. It is doing a terrible job. So when Europeans learned it, they called it cipher, which is very similar to cipher. Later on, they decided to spell it with Z. From there, Italians started calling it zephyr, and from there, it became zero in French language. that's and from French it came into English, and today we know about 0. Now, the place value notation, where we write 11 as 1 and 1, because if you know about Roman numerals, we write 11 as 10 and 1. And Romans were pretty patriotic, and yet they had to dump their number system. Not only they had to dump their number system, Arabs had to dump their number system, Latin Americans had to dump their number system, every culture had their own number system. It is the Indian number system that has prevailed all over the world, and there was a big fight at one time because people from these cultures were saying, if you are a patriot, why do you want to use Indian system? Well, because it was easier, it was very effective, and that's what happened. So when Copernicus, he wrote his book, in his book he's saying it, the reason I am dropping Roman numerals is because I want to do my calculation fast. And the book that he wrote used Indian numerals. So the scientific revolution that happened in Europe, it happened because the mathematical revolution happened in India, a knowledge which unfortunately not many of us know. This is the fight in Middle East. People who were saying that let's not accept the number system that is coming from the foreigners in this case, Indians. I will omit all discussion of the sciences of the Hindus, a people not the same as Syrians, because he was from Syria. Their subtle discovery in the science of astronomy, discoveries which are more ingenious than those of the Greeks and Babylonians. Their valuable method of calculation, their computing that surpasses description. I wish only to say that this computation is done by means of 9 signs. If those who believe that they speak Greek, that they have reached the limits of science, should know these things, they would be convinced that there are others who know something. So this is an interesting statement coming from Siva, who was an Arab, basically trying to promote Indian numerals. And interesting thing is, here it says 9 signs. Why 9? Why not 10? The reason is 0 is nothing. They had trouble in accepting nothing as a number. So they called it 9 rather than 10 throughout in medieval world. So that's the reason there are 9 signs. And this comes from a